Okay, it seems I'm all wired up. The tech lady in front is nodding, so very well. Thanks, Tom, for inviting me to give this talk. It gives me the opportunity a bit to complain. So the title of my talk, Machine Learning, I just kind of go back now. Machine Learning in Soil Health is the horizon, the limit, truly. And I was reading the title of the discussion panel. So the soil health data revolution and how AI is changing soil health, soil use forever. This reminded me a bit about the hype cycle, where you have a technology trigger and then you have a peak of inflated expectations. And this title sounds to me a bit like inflated expectations. And within my talk, I might bring you down to this valley of disillusionment. I think now I lost, okay, it's coming back. Through the valley of disillusionment, but I hope I will bring you up to the plateau of productivity. Do I have to do something differently? So I moved away a bit, okay. So hopefully I will be able to walk you smoothly through this valley so we can end up on the plateau of productivity as quick as possible. So soil health policy, as Pete mentioned before, needs spatially explicit data of soil health indicators and across time. So what this is often achieved by digital soil mapping, by creating soil maps using machine learning. And we predict soil properties across space and across time. How does this work, or what's the common approach? What we usually do, we take our soil profiles that we have sampled at the locations we derive from. Usually the samples are at genetic horizons, then we transfer them to fixed depth intervals. So the depth that we observe is the same at every location. And then we feed each soil property we are interested in, soil organic carbon, clay content, or pH, for example, here, or also our indicators, we feed them into machine learning models one by one. And then we use our environmental predictors that we have for the whole surface, and we predict our soil property or indicator maps for several depth intervals and also across time. And the soil depth and time, so the year, is usually included as a predictor into the model. And what we are going to predict here is basically the statistical expectation. So the most probable value will be shown at every pixel, given all the input data that we have. And so this relies on all the soil data we have at the beginning and also the type of predictors that we have. So everything fine? I will give you 4 examples. So the first, as Tom mentioned, I processed a lot of Swiss data. I also produced pH maps with this generally accepted approach. And I had a decent number of soil samples, 2,500 locations. I did proper validation, all fine, but still, one lady of the Swiss government refused to use my map. So what was the issue here? You see here, we have the observed distribution is clearly bimodal. And in blue, you see the distribution of the predicted maps. And which is only very partly reflecting this bimodal distribution. So what you see, I have a large number of predictions are actually in a pH range that is rarely observed. It's in an intermediate pH range, and the people from the Swiss government then complained, okay, what's the ecological interpretation here? Are we now in an acidic or rather in a basic environment? What does that actually mean for the plants? So, and just to point out, this is not just a Swiss phenomena. This also appears here in the global world soil database. We also observe this bimodal distribution. And obviously, this originates from the different efficient buffer ranges of pH, where we have in the lower range, we have the aluminium oxides, and in the basic range, we have the calcium carbonates that are efficient buffers, and in between, we have inefficient buffers. So we expect, from a pathological point of view, to have much less soil horizons or soil samples observed in this intermediate pH range. So now I thought, okay, maybe I just used the wrong machine learning technique. I used random forest, and so I tested a large range of different techniques. And as you can see, none of these, all these colored different approaches, none of them solved the issue. So I just proposed a new approach that specifically deals with this issue by just cutting up the distribution and model the more acidic pH range and the basic pH range separately, and merging it together again in a meaningful way. This is the original prediction, and here the new approach, this seemed to have worked quite well, reproducing this bimodal distribution, and now we have also a much smaller number of pixels predicted in this pH range, where we actually did not observe many values. But still, what is not well predicted are the outer tails. So the very acidic soils that are, of course, also very important to know where they are located, are poorly predicted because we have still a certain smoothing behavior. So I would say, okay, for pH, we maybe solved it partly, let's say, at least. But it's still, if we go with this one-by-one approach, where we have separate models for the different soil properties, it's still possible to have a prediction of a pH lower than 6 and calcium carbonate content that is larger than 0, which is chemically very unlikely to happen, let's say. So then, of course, that brings me to the second example. I also checked what the other people did, and I investigated soil grids a bit. And here, soil grids are the global maps at the resolution of 250 meters. It's a large number of different soil properties for different soil depths. And here you can see the clay content plotted against the cation exchange capacity. And in this plot, within the observed soil profile of the World Soil Database. And as expected, there is a certain relationship because clay minerals obviously are cation exchangers. But if we check the same, the cation exchange capacity and the clay content in the observed soil maps, just for a random number of selected pixels, it is, the model is again roughly predicting the mean and is not really reflecting this correlation that we have in our original data. So, okay, I thought, okay, maybe there is a solution. And of course, there was recently a publication that was doing random forest for multiple outcomes. And here, of course, soil organic carbon against total nitrogen. There is clearly also a correlation. And with the conventional approach, predicting everything one by one, it looked like in this publication, and the outcome with this multivariate or multi-outcome machine learning approach, it looked quite promising. So I thought, okay, I use it for my next data problem that I have. And here I needed to predict soil texture. And since clay, sand, silt are also correlated, I thought this must be quite useful. So what was my task here? for a potato irrigation network, they wanted to replace their sampling with using just predictive maps. And again, end users that in the end, they did not use my data. They continued the sampling because I was not able to predict the very clay soils and the very sandy soils. That's just while using a normal random forest, it's again showing this smoothing behavior. And maybe as a small side note, this is not just happening in soil science. If you use one of these large language models like ChatGPT and you ask them, for example, to an abstract or so, it gives you a very neat average text, but it's just a bit of common blah, blah, blah. It does not really contain the very specifics. So this is also observed in other type of machine learning approaches. But of course, for irrigation, that's very undesirable. But here, predicted by a random forest with one-to-one, we see at least the correlation is slightly reproduced. But of course, the distribution of the prediction here in red and the observed values black is largely underestimated. So I use this multi-outcome approach that you can see here in red, the, let's say, normal machine learning approach with random forest, and then in orange and green, this two versions of this new approach, but it performed even worse. So it seems also not to be a universal solution that we could just apply to any problem. Okay, this brings me to my last example already. I, of course, also checked the echo data cube and the space-time mapping that is produced within AI for soil health. So what do we have? I just took the easiest, which is clay content, also from interpretation, just to see how it works. This is available for soil depths, and it's available for every 4 years between 2000 and 2020. So quite some repetitions. And now I just picked a point outside of Wageningen, a bit to the south of here. And what you can see, we have a considerable variation in over time at this location. It seems clay content went up a bit and then it decreased by a bit more than 10% within this short time span. So from a statistical point of view, I mean, I would have applied the same approach. It is, again, the statistical most likely value that is predicted over the years. It's the statistical expectation given all the input data. But from a pedological point of view, I'm not really sure if the clay content is supposed to vary that much. I'm not aware of maybe some erosion processes, but this would need to be then quite some erosion. It's difficult to say what type of process would actually lead to such a reduction of clay. And if we have a look at the larger picture here, the clay content in subsoil for the year 2008, and now in 4 years later, and take a look at mainly Romania and Bulgaria. So we have a large increase in clay content over a large surface, and the difference is roughly 20%. So a process that would lead to an increase in clay in subsoil would be clay translocation, but I doubt it is so fast that it increases by 20% over only 4 years. Or at least I'm not aware of a soil process that would actually lead to such a large enrichment. But statistically, I've not investigated the details, but usually we do not have a lot of samples that are in the subsoil, and especially not over time, because also Lucas is only sampled in the topsoil. So given the input data, the model just predicts what's most likely, but it's not the most likely, actually not the most likely value given our soil process knowledge. Therefore, I would say our current approach with digital soil mapping is a bit at its limit if it's really fully data-driven. So what could we do about it? Okay, we could include better predictors, more predictors, but what's the point here? Okay, remote sensing data has been proposed a lot, but let's be honest, that's just a very coarse approximation of the actual soil processes that we want to map. It's depending on what type of reflectance is used. It's just the top millimeter gives some information about the vegetation, but it does not really give us the complex interaction that we actually would need, the vegetation, soil interaction, etc. Or we actually would need a higher resolution surface or soil forming material map. This is usually also not available in detail because just imagine a map of the last glaciation. That's usually just a coarse hand-drawn map. So this is usually we also don't really have the information we need. And just imagine we would also need the full record of the land usage history and the soil usage history, potential erosion history of all the human influences. It's just an illusion we will ever get that because we already struggle to get the proper land use maps. So therefore, better predictors, yeah, we can still try to get everything out of remote sensing data, but it will only be an approximation. So more sampling, yes, certainly we need more samples. But we all know that's time consuming, and even if we have the budget, it takes a long time. So we could also just invest in better algorithms, and that's what's mainly done within digital soil mapping. So people go for the latest fashion of deep learning, the newest architecture of that has been developed of neural networks and so on. But let me put it a bit into perspective, the more sampling and better algorithms, if this will actually solve our problem. So just to create soil grids, of which I showed an example before, there were more than 400 predictors for explanatory maps and 240,000 locations with some information, but of course also not with the complete information. And nearly 1 million soil layers, soil horizons. So quickly think of a second how many hours this was to sample. It's really a lot of work in there. So I would not say that's a small amount of data. It is a huge amount of data. But if we compare it with current successful applications that have a wide range of usage nowadays, like a large language model, ChatGPT has been trained on 300 billion of tokens. If you convert that to A4 pages, that's millions of A4 pages of text. Or the computer vision model, ResNet 50, which is used for self-driving cars or in medical applications, has been trained on 14 million of images. So even our 240,000 locations globally, that's basically really not a lot compared to these applications. So from my point of view, through big data in soil. Therefore, more sampling and better algorithms is very unlikely to completely solve the problem. I suggest we need to move towards knowledge integration into the machine learning system. And I will quickly just as a small overview, because there are quite obvious and evident facts about soil science, our soil processes that are currently the fully data-driven algorithms have to learn that fully from the data. We do not give any constraints about, okay, clay translocation only takes place if a certain acidity level has been taken place, and weathering and the decalcification front. And all these processes are currently, the system needs to learn them from the data, and if there is not enough data, it will not be able to fully reproduce these complexities. So how can we build in knowledge into the machine learning workflow that we currently have? There are several angles. So first, instead of just going from horizons to fixed layers and then to just predict everything one by one, we could think of defining our input to the machine learning model differently by mapping diagnostic horizons, for example, or to model full sets of soil properties. We could adapt the model setup. I showed one example with the pH value. We could also recent publications point into using this process-informed machine learning, where parts of the processes are included into the loss function in the machine learning approach. Or we could generate more informative predictors by, for example, using process-based models, or systematically harvest expert knowledge by developing frameworks that give input directly on the level of predictors. Another option, given this soil process knowledge and this typical type of profiles, we could also just do data augmentation to obtain sort of virtual soil profiles that we have more training data available. And as you can see, my slide got quite populated. There are quite different options, but they all need close collaboration of soil process knowledge scientists, let's say, and data scientists. So to summarize, digital soil mapping, I would say in its current approach, it is powerful, but it has come to a certain limit. And there is no big data in soil because it's just too liberal. We cannot do citizen science and then or collect everybody's images by just offering a cloud, and it's just too expert-based data that's too laborious to collect. And we need to move towards knowledge integration into our machine learning system, and which of course requires a strong collaboration between the field, lab, and the computer soil people. Therefore, to come back to my question, is the horizon the limit? No, my last slide. Of course, the horizon is the limit, the soil horizon. Thank you.